I've always said, what you support prospers, what you feed grows. And in St. Francis, Kansas, I went home this last week to open my mail and find out that taxes had increased like 30%. And people are all upset. They're angry. I mean, they're wanting to protest on their way to Walmart in Goodland, Kansas. I said, don't you realize what you're doing? As you drive out of this city of St. Francis and you drive 35 miles to Walmart in Goodland, you are taking those tax dollars that would have otherwise been spent and invested in St. Francis, Kansas, and collected there, and you're putting them in Sherman County in Goodland, Kansas, which has been completely strip mined by Walmart. They don't have a Main Street anymore. And we act so contrary to our own self-interest in many, many ways. But this is just an example, a recent one that I experienced at home. And the fact is, in St. Francis, Kansas, we've lost our tax base. We've lost people who sell retail stuff, so they don't collect the tax revenues that they have always depended upon to keep the city alive and the county moving. At the same time, farmers have been forced to produce below cost of production, further declining the community. We've lost 30%, or over half our children in the last 30 years in the St. Francis school system. Half of our kids are gone. So it's about rebuilding community at the same time as we are giving better food to people with that direct connection. So that's what Ranch Foods is about. So appreciate being here today. Any questions?
So what was that website you said earlier for your blog?
It's MikeCallicrate.com. And if you go there, you're going to see what businesses we have going. You'll see the mobile meat processing website, and my blog is also on that.
Okay, so it's blog.mikecallicrate.
Well, the blog is blog.nobull.net. And if you go to that site, you'll see why it's no bull. So.
Yeah, I'm sure you're aware that the Food Modernization Act recently passed, and I'm wondering if you see that affecting your mobile processing at all.
Well, the Food Modernization Act, S510,
Yeah.
is now in a position to be voted on. They had closure last week, and I am extremely upset and worried about the current food safety in this country. USDA is completely ignoring its responsibility in meat inspection. They have put a program in place called HACCP, Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point Approach to Food Safety. It has been a complete and total failure. We are now producing more E. coli than we've ever produced by the big meat packers. And there is less inspection than ever before in our food system. So why is it we're worrying about this food safety bill when we won't even address the current law and get inspectors to inspect what we are currently doing? Everybody is just mindlessly thinking HACCP is the answer when in fact it's been a total failure, and we've said it's been a total failure. No one's listening. I'm really worried about agencies that fail to enforce existing laws and instead embrace new legislation. I'm saying it's not necessary. We just need to do our job. Why is it that FDA is only inspecting less than 1.5% of the produce that comes into this country? From China, from other places that are proven to be dangerous places. Why is it that USDA has allowed meat to come in from Canada from 30-month and older livestock with a BSE problem in Canada? Why are they doing this? All in the name of globalization. And if you read S510, you're going to start to see real quick how it really fits this model of the World Trade Organization and globalization. And what I live for every day, the reason I get out of bed every day, is to come up with a model that's an alternative to WTO and globalization. This globalization thing has been a fraud. It's been wrong. It's been great for Wall Street and big corporations, and it's been terrible for people. S510, I think, furthers the interests of big corporations. And I'm not convinced one bit that it isn't. And I know I've got legislators, senators, and congressmen that are angry at me because I won't support this bill. But I don't think it's necessary. I think we need to enforce the laws that are currently in place and get control of the current food safety problems that we have.
And then my second question was, where do you source your feed now?
We buy everything that we feed to our livestock. It comes from the area around our operation. So,
Great.
anybody else?
Well, I want to go back to her question, and I think it's a really good one, and it's a big concern. The bill that's just to be voted on, and a little bit that I've read in it, are you worried if it does pass us how that's going to impact you?
Well,
Because it's certainly to give all the power to the big four.
There's been a big worry about small family farm agriculture, independent backyard production, this kind of thing that we're so excited about here in Denver with the urban homesteading market. The Tester Amendment is supposed to fix that. The Tester Amendment says we're excluded. The small family farm agriculture will be excluded from this bill because we're really not the problem at all. The problem comes from industrial agriculture. They are a very intensive, large-scale, and unsafe method and non-sustainable method of production. But they want protection. And who do you think writes these bills? It's big industrial agribusiness firms who can afford the attorneys that write the bills and put them in the hands of a friendly congressman that they've given a lot of money to. And that's how it all gets started. And then we have an egg recall. Then we have a lettuce and a spinach recall. And oh yeah, now we have to get this food safety bill through. But have we ever even looked at the source cause of this problem and identified it as industrial agriculture? I mean, when we make somebody sick today, we can make them sick in 45 states within a week. If you get a product locally that's not good, how long does it take you to fix that problem? And you can go right back to the guy that produced it and say, hey, what's going on here? Well, we just didn't clean the milk tank quite enough. Or, you know, we don't have a good enough sanitation system. We're going to improve it, I promise you. You know, it's their livelihood at stake. They don't get to remain anonymous behind the curtain, you know, and nobody knows who they are. Another example is food safety that we could do right now. This E. coli that's going out in ground beef from these big meat packers, we don't even know what country it comes from. It could come from one of 20 countries. And we're killing 5,000 head a day in these plants and blending all this foreign meat into this further processing that's done on down the road. So no telling how many animals are represented in a quarter-pound burger. But when somebody gets sick, why can't we trace it back to the meat packer? Because they're blocking it. No, they're blocking it. So we've got a small plant in Miles City, Montana, owned by John Munsell. This was years ago when ConAgra had owned the plant in Greeley. He bought that beef from ConAgra. He knew the E. coli that came with that beef was from Greeley, Colorado, from that ConAgra plant. And you know what? They blocked it. They would not allow traceback because ConAgra didn't want them to. And ConAgra runs the USDA along with their other friends in the big meat packers. So if we were really serious about food safety, why wouldn't we implement traceback right now, today, to the source? E. coli is enteric. E. coli comes from inside the animal, inside the gut. It's in the manure. It doesn't happen at the plant that makes the hamburgers. It happens at the slaughter, the point of slaughter. So why in the world don't we trace back to that slaughter plant and fix that problem right now? And you know what they'd have to do? They'd have to slow the chain down. They're killing one every 8.5 to 9 seconds. They want to address the food safety problem, slow the chain down. Do you know that in the typical big meat packing plant today, you've got to speak over 100 languages to communicate? These are people who don't even understand the language, and we've got them on a line, slaughtering cattle, doing one cut at a time, puncturing a gut, everything that day until cleanup is potentially contaminated with what was in the gut of the animal. So let's get back to where we've got smaller plants that produce less. They've gone so far beyond this economy of scale and efficiency thing, it's ridiculous. And that is just that is absolutely a baseless argument that they've got economies of scale. Their size allows them to run a chain too fast and keep USDA from inspecting, which they don't do. It's HACCP now, so it's a paper chase. That's size. That's the impact of size. Their size lets them buy cattle way below their cost of production. Shorten the farmer 20% of his share of the consumer dollar compared to what he got 30 years ago. And you realize we've lost 1,000 ranchers a month since 1980? We've lost 41% of the people who raise our cattle in this country. At the same time as consumers have continued to eat beef, and our population has expanded, and demand because of that has grown significantly. And the rancher is stomped into the dirt by the foot of the big meat packer. Their size has allowed them to be abusive, not only in food safety, but in the depressing of the price of cattle. And now it's even gone a step further. Now the retailer has become so big and powerful. The Walmarts, the Krogers, the Safeways, the Cisco's in food service, the U.S. Foods in food service, they have become so big and powerful that they now can dictate terms to the big meat packer. So John Tyson tells me personally in 2002, hey Mike, you're suing the wrong people. I was suing IBP at the time. He said, you should be suing Walmart. They dictate price to us, we have no choice but to pay less. What are we going to do? Now we have to address the market power of big retailers. Of course we do. And that hearing will be, is it the 8th or 9th of December in Washington, D.C.? Yeah, I'll be there for that. So we're in a real bind here. But we can get outside of all this system if we can all just work together here and do business with one another and be outside of that system. And that's what excites me the most about places like Denver Urban Homesteading that James and Irina have done here. This is huge, James. This is very significant. And I hope that people realize how important it is. So, thanks. Any other questions? Thanks for listening to me. Thanks.
Thank you.